Okay, this is lesson 10.1, area of a parallelogram. So parallelograms include rectangles, squares, rhombuses. So rectangles, squares, and rhombuses are all quadrilaterals. They all have 4 sides. And they all have 2 sets of parallel lines. So the formula we use when we're finding the area of a parallelogram is area equals base times height. So this is your base. This is your height. Your base is always your foundation. If they ever were to give you the number at the top, remember the top and the bottom are the same. So your foundation here is 6.3. And your height is right here. It's this. We're looking at this dotted line in this case. We can't just go by the side here because it's a slope. So to really get the true height, we have to see what the difference is from the base to the top. So right here they give us that, which is 2.1. That's the thing about a rhombus, or this is, a lot of times we call this a parallelogram in itself. It usually gets the name parallelogram. Is we look for that dotted line to see how tall it is. So then 6.3 times 2.1. And what do we get? 13.23. Now, remember we're finding area. So how would I write my units here? I would write it as meters squared. Any questions on that first example? Okay, so let's look at example 2. So this time we have a square. So you could still use the formula area equals base times height with this, but there's also another formula that they use. They use A equals S squared. Now S here does not mean square. Anybody have an idea of what it means? It means side. It means side. So what we do here is we replace the S with, what's the length of the side? 9.5. So we're saying 9.5 squared. What does 9.5 squared mean we're going to do? 9.5 times 9.5, which gives us what?
90.25.
And that would be centimeters squared. To me, it's fine if you want to just use base times height every time. But there may be some cases in the book where you see them use this. So just know that that S means side. And essentially you end up doing the same thing. Here, right here, notice we're doing base times height. Base and height. Or side times side. Anybody have a question about that one? Alright, look at example 3. This was a little bit different than the other two. So a parallelogram has an area of 98 square feet. So they're telling us the area right off the bat. That's what's different about this one. Then it tells us it has a base of 14 feet and it wants to know what's the height. So over here, I'm just going to write A equals, B equals, and H equals. So it tells me that the area is 98 square feet. It tells me that the base is 14 feet. And I've got to figure out the height. So I'm going to start with the formula still. I'm going to start with A equals base times height. And we're going to fill in what we know. We can look at the figure to see it, or we can look here on the side. So we know that A is 98. We know that B is 14, and we've got to figure out H. What does this look like? What does this remind you of that we've learned? Where we were finding the equation, we were solving equations, we were finding the unknown number. So how do I get H by itself here? Right now I've got 14 times H. Right now I've got 14 times H. So how do I undo the multiplication? Divide by. Well, I'm going to have to divide by to get H by itself here. Divide by 14. So that means I have to divide by 14 here. That leaves me with H on this side. What's 98 divided by 14? 7. So we get the height would be 7 feet. Okay, go ahead and turn to page 373. Number 1. What's my shape? We've got a parallelogram. So I've got my formula. Area equals base times height. And they've actually already written this part out for you. So we've got that the area equals, the base is 8.3. And the height is 1.2. So 8.3 times 1.2 gives us what? 9.96. Now what unit do I put after it? M squared, for meters squared. Any questions on that one? Alright, look at number 2. Again, always start by writing your formula. Okay? This one would be really easy to do in your head on some problems. But get used to writing the formula, because the more advanced you get, the harder they're going to get. You need to write your formula. So area equals base times height. Also, the more you write something, the better you remember it. The more likely you are to remember it. So we're saying area equals, what's my base? 12 times, what's my height?
7.
What's 12 times 7?
84.
And my units would be?
Square feet.
Or feet squared. You could write it like that, or you could say square feet like this. Either one's okay. Alright, so number 3. We have a square. I can tell by the numbers it's definitely a square. If ever in doubt that it's a square, check the numbers. So I'm going to start with area equals S squared for side squared. So that means I'm replacing the side with 2.5. There's my squared. So what does that mean? What would this actually be the same as?
2.5 times 2.5.
2.5 times 2.5. But you're multiplying.
6.25.
6.25. Remember, you're multiplying. So then what would my units be? Squared millimeters or millimeters squared? Alright, look at number 4. So what makes this one a little more difficult? We got fractions. But we can do fractions, right? So start with your formula. Area equals base times height. What's my base? 3/4. What's my height? 2/3. Okay, so what am I going to do next? Just multiply straight across. If you want to cross cancel, you can. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out because I've got 3 and 3 here, so 3 going to 3 once, 3 going to 3 once, and then here 2 will go into 2 once, 2 will go into 4 twice. So when I multiply across, what do I get? 1/2, and my unit is feet squared. Any questions on that one? All right, let's look at 5 and 6. All right, so this time we're finding the unknown measurement. So notice they've given me my area. I can look here to see that the base is 5.5. So here I'm going to put 5.5 yards. And I've got to find my height. So I'm going to start with my formula. Area equals base times height. I'm replacing A with 11, the base with 5.5, and I'm trying to find height. Before I do this, before I go ahead and start trying to figure out what H is, I'm going to go ahead and make that 5.5 an improper fraction. And I'm going to go ahead and put a 1 under 11. And I'm putting some space there. So 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11 over 2. What do I need to do to get H by itself? I'm going to divide by what? That's right, 11.5. Or 11 halves. There we go. That's how you'd say it, 11 halves. Alright, and I've still got that H over there. So over here I'm going to have to divide by 11 halves. So if I keep it, change it, flip it, these cancel out and leave me with just H. And if I keep it, change it, flip it, these cancel out and leave me with what? Just 2. So it would be 2 yards for my height. The only time you square it is when it's area. Base and height, you never square them, okay? And the reason we square area is because we're taking 2 different dimensions. So we've got to, and we're telling how many squares would be in that shape. So that's why we square it. All right, number 6. Start with area equals base times height. We're going to replace A with 36. My base is 4, and we're trying to find our height. Hopefully this one's a little bit easier. I could go back and put my base right here as 4 yards. Alright, so what am I going to do to get H by itself? Not multiply. Divide by 4. Divide by 4. My 4's cancel out and leave me with H. 36 divided by 4 is? So I get that my height is 9 yards. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, you're going to go ahead and do 7 through 12. Then bring it to me and let me check it.